I'd like to, before the meeting commences, I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the land of the Bidjigal and Gadigal people who occupy the Sydney coast, being the traditional owners. On behalf of Randwick Local Planning Panel, I acknowledge and pay my respects to the elders past and present and the Aboriginal people in attendance today. So good afternoon and welcome to the Randwick Local Planning Panel. I'm the chair of the panel and my name is Sue Francis, and with me are the other panel members who will notice are not on screen but are actually in the council chambers, and I will get them to introduce themselves and also to identify whether they have any conflicts of interest. I myself don't have any conflicts, but I'll go around the room. So let's start with Liz. Perhaps you can go next.
Yep, so I'm Elizabeth Kincaid. I'm an expert on the planning panel, and I have no conflicts of interest to declare and have completed my written declaration.
Thank you. Kim
Burrell, planning expert, no conflicts of interest, and I've completed the forms.
Laurie?
Yeah, Laurie O'Connor, I'm the community representative on the panel, and I have no conflicts of interest.
Fantastic, thank you. Now today we have a number of speakers. We have 3 items on this public agenda and we have speakers for each item. I have registered speakers for the matter at Lexington Place, Maroubra of Gary Finn. For 68 Beach Road Street, Coogee, I have Hamid Samavi and George Caravan, and I have Sylvia Bell as an objector. And in relation to 40 The Avenue, Randwick, I have Tony Moody and Michael Fuller. Now, what I'm going to suggest to you is that if you remove your camera, by all means listen. But if there's too many people on the screen, it's a little bit hard to follow who's speaking and who's not. So when we get to your item, I'll call your name, you can put your camera on, and then you can speak. That would be clearer for everyone. Now, please be advised that each speaker will be given 3 minutes to address the panel. We have the panel's visited the site, and we've been provided all the submissions. Received response to the public exhibition and the application. Therefore, there's no need for you to repeat all the points you made in any submission because we've already had them, read them, and seen the site. The applicant may wish to, and I would advise the applicant to comment on any of the issues raised in the council's report and any submissions and comments raised by any of the objectors during the process, so that they can perhaps clarify those matters to the panel. Only registered speakers are allowed to speak, which is why I raised the question of people who might be just observing. That's fine, but they're not in a position to be able to make any representations because they're not registered before this meeting. Please be mindful, because we are streaming this meeting, that the persons must not use any defamatory or offensive language, so they will be asked to leave the meeting, and the meeting may be adjourned. The recording this particular meeting will be available on Council's website, but please try and speak clearly, because sometimes reception can be difficult, and we want to be able to make sure we hear everything you say. So the first item on the agenda, my apologies, is 33 to 7 Lexington Place, Maroubra, and I have Mr. Gary Finn, who is the architect of the matter, to speak. And so I will call Mr. Finn to speak. Is Mr. Finn there? Andrew, do you know if we've let Mr. Finn in?
So
Yes,
he's in.
He's on mute.
Can you please unmute
He's
yourself?
on mute. You're on mute, Mr. Finn. Can you find that mute button? And put your camera on. Mr. Finn? He's popped up for a coffee. Mr. Finn? Well, whilst we're waiting for Mr. Finn, I'll just clarify the next steps. What we will do is we'll hear from each speakers on each item. There may be some questions that we have of the submitters and objectors, and then we'll move on to the next item, and then the next item, then we will adjourn the meeting, we will deliberate, and the determination will be put on Council's website as soon as the matter has been resolved. So I'm really hoping Mr. Gary Finn is there and he can turn off his mute and put on his camera. You can't do anything about that, can you, Angela? You can't unmute him or...
We can't
No.
unmute.
I think he has unmuted, but
Garrett, Mr. Finn, are you there?
Oh, yeah.
You were on mute a minute ago, a second ago, I should say. We'll give you a few more seconds to be able to clarify this. And perhaps if you're having problems, you might want to contact the Council Secretariat and we might have to call you in rather than have you on Teams. So you're still mute on our screens. Oh dear.
Do you have a phone?
Yeah.
Madam Chair, we will ring him and see if we can get him on a line.
That would be fantastic. If you can hear that, Mr. Finn, we'll try and contact you separately. And we'll come back to this item after the next item. We'll see if we can get you.
Okay, all right. If you continue, and I'll call him when you're ready.
Thank you. By all means, call him now.
Okay.
But we'll go on to the next item and then we'll deal with the Maroubra matter after that. So that being the case, we'll move on to the second item on this public agenda, which is 68 Beach Street, Coogee. And I have Miss Sylvia Bell. Are you there, Sylvia?
I am, yes.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Okay, the floor is yours. You have 3 minutes. Please let us know what you're concerned about.
Okay, so our main areas of concern are in relation to the geotechnical issues, which relate to stability of the sandstone cliff face on the southern side of the development site. As a result of the proposed excavation.
Now exiting.
This cliff isn't a boundary, it's actually partly on our property. Our concerns are raised by the reports that have been submitted from Davies Geotechnical. We're concerned that the proposed excavation of the basement car park is highly likely to render the sandstone unstable and risk collapse, and there's potential for significant damage to occur if the engineering concerns and the flaws in the architectural design aren't addressed, including risk to property and injury to persons. The design of the basement needs to be revisited to minimise the extent of the excavation, and this will impact on the basement car parking design and it will impact on the design of the building as a whole. We also think that the proposal is an overdevelopment of the site. There's non-compliance with planning requirements for wall height, building height, setbacks and floor space ratio, particularly in terms of the bulk towards the front of the development and at the uppermost level, and excessive building height resulting in an overdevelopment of the site. The bulk and the mass of the proposed building has an undesirable impact on the visual amenity of the area, particularly when viewed from the southern approach. Furthermore, given the number of vehicles that will be entering and leaving the car park, the controls regarding setbacks should be complied with for safety, visibility and access reasons. And given the prominent location of the site on a peak on the road, the development needs to be a balanced and appropriate transition from the properties to the south. We're also concerned about the overshadowing and privacy impacts of the development, particularly to the properties to the south of the development, and we think it will have a negative impact on amenity. And specifically in relation to our property, there's a significant impact on solar access to the skylights and windows facing the north, which exceed the current shadowing impacts. The excavation of the sandstone, as I said, is a major concern. The development fails to achieve a number of key planning requirements or provide adequate documentation to demonstrate that the proposal will not have a significant adverse impact on the amenity of the area. We believe the bulk and massing of the proposed development is not commensurate with the site's zoning and physical constraints. We've got significant concerns about the geotechnical issues, which directly impact the type of structure that can be built on the site. And overall, we consider the proposal will have a negative impact on amenity of the surrounding area. It's out of character with the existing streetscape and doesn't make a positive contribution to the local area. It's a unique site, which you would have seen if you visited the area. It's in a prominent location on Beach Street and is visible from a number of vantage points. It's imperative that the development of this site is balanced and complements the streetscape. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions the panel may wish to ask Sylvia for clarification or anything?
No.
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 Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. So the next speakers I have are the applicant and his planner. So there's Hamin Samabi and George Karabanis. Are you two together or are you there separately?
Yes, I'm here. George Karabanis could not make it today, but we have David from the architectural team who can sort of present on his behalf.
Okay.
Yes, so I would like to sort of address quickly the process that we've been sort of faced with council, and it was a bit frustrating because this application was lodged last year, and then in January basically last year in December we had a visit from council's staff, and they were happy with the overall design and with everything, and they said the approval is going to be issued in January basically. So in January we received an email with a few requirements that yes, if you comply with these requirements, we are happy to issue the approval. And we did comply with those requirements. We resolved all the matters, and then it was just going on and on and on. And in July, we realized that there is a panel that is reconsidering and revisiting or whatever they're doing. So we don't understand the progress with council, how it works, and we think that an application should be considered once and all the issues should be raised at the same time, so we can deal with the issues and not dealing with like different sort of timing and different bodies involved. So anyway, we had no choice of basically lodging this to court. So as you know, this is sitting with court right now. We received a statement of facts and contentions. We had a meeting with council yesterday, and we showed them that many of the contentions that they had were wrong or were sort of the wrong interpretation. So we sort of have an understanding, and I'm pretty sure that council staff, they have a good understanding that this building complies with all the regulations, and it is a compliant building. The bulk of the building is because of the affordable housing that we provide. And I just want to sort of stress on the fact that we have a DA approval for this site, and the extent of excavation is already approved in a court process. So it's a court order. We are actually going ahead with demolition and excavation of the site. So the proposal that we have is just adding a bit of excavation to the back, and is not affecting the current approval. But we think that the new proposal is a much better result for this site, because in the previous one, because it was rushed throughout the court process, as you can appreciate, the lift shaft and the fire staircase was at the back of the property, which blocked the access of the residents to the back garden, and also obviously blocked the view and the solar access from the back, which is the western side of the building, sort of northwest and west of the building. So in the new design, we shifted that element to the middle of the building, so we have a much better solar access and cross ventilation. So I understand that the time is up. If you would like, we can show the changes that we discussed with council yesterday. David can go through that, or otherwise.
Can I just
Yes.
stop you there, Bernard?
Sure.
And the only reason I stop you there is because whilst I appreciate that you've had a without prejudice meeting, which is fantastic.
Yes.
We only received those. I received them late last night, and
Sure.
I have a spreadsheet, and I've seen the plans, and I have looked at them, but we
Sure.
had no report from council on them, and some of the panel members did not receive them. So it's really not something that we can consider today. We can only consider, unfortunately, the plans, the subject of the report, which I know are not. I know you have been beyond that, and I appreciate that.
Sure.
And I encourage you to continue to have that conversation in relation to without prejudice under Section 34 to see if this matter can be resolved, because the panel is mindful that you have been to court a couple of times, and I know that the last court case was not successful, but you do have a one level lower development approved. I understand. Yes. There may be, however, and I'm happy to let the architect David speak if he wishes to, but if it's to go through the amendments, I don't know that that's going to be helpful for you, because we're not really in a position to do anything with those plans.
Absolutely.
Other to encourage you to try and address the concerns that are in this SOFAX and identified in this report.
Sure.
But it might be helpful in that process if the panel identifies any concerns that you may or may not be able to clarify or to improve on, or concerns that might be there. And so what I will do is I'll ask the panel if they've got any queries or questions for you, and it might be better if you can just address those. And also I note the objector, Ms. Bell, had a few points she's raised, and if you could identify whether you've addressed those particular issues. So there was concern about the sandstone wall on the southern boundary, and it's a joint wall, it's a solid wall. I suspect it crosses both boundaries.
Yes.
And the concerns in relation to that, that's a very important aspect, obviously.
Yeah, we have a... sorry, can I address that?
Carry on.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there was a sort of a thorough consideration of that issue after the approval that we had between our geotechnical engineer, council's geotechnical engineer, and the neighbor's geotechnical engineer, and they came up with a sort of agreed construction methodology that we are proposing to be a part of this application. Well,
if you can continue that in any
yes.
process as you move on to from here.
Absolutely.
I'll ask the panel if they've got any other particular questions or queries. Kim, did you have any questions or queries you might want to ask?
No, I'm fine with the discussion so far.
Okay. Liz?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the affordable housing component of the proposal. Just particularly interested in what the rates, like what you anticipate they would be rented for, and any other information you might want to provide the panel today,
Sure.
just about how that will operate as affordable housing.
So I guess there is a bit of wrong concept of affordable housing in the area. So affordable housing is provided to those people that not necessarily on a.
Can I just say, Harriet?
Yes.
This panel is very fully aware of what the affordable housing provisions are. We're not lay people. We do understand what the affordable housing provisions are. So we know the rent will be 80% of the mean rental for the area. So we're very mindful of what the rental will be.
So what is the question from me?
Well,
the question is,
yes.
No, that's okay. So I was just going to say, what do you anticipate these units will be rented for as affordable housing?
It's 20% under the current rental in the market.
So
yes.
What is your anticipated rental for these? That's what
I haven't done the study, so we are not dealing with that because it's a third-party company that is allocated by government to manage these properties for 15 years. So we are not a part of that, and I have no idea.
Okay, noted that you.
Yeah.
Okay, you have no idea.
Okay.
It's
Anything
just
else?
my understanding is it's 20 to 30% under the current rental in the area. So that's my understanding.
Yeah, no, we understand the framework
Whoa.
that it operates within. I was
Is
just
now
interested
joining.
to know what you anticipate
That
property
is
like
my
this would
understanding.
rent
That's
out
the
in that
extent of.
framework.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess the other question with
Go on,
that,
Kim.
why was the penthouse chosen?
Because of the feasibility of the project, if we had to allocate a portion of the affordable housing to other units, basically we had only 2 that we could sell, and technically the project was not feasible. With the way that we allocated the FSR, at the moment we can sell 3 units, and keep 3 units as affordable housing. So it actually helps us with the finance of the project and being able to actually go forward with the project. So technically, if you had the penthouse and one of the units, which is 50% of the FSR allocated to non-affordable, then you have a very you have only 2 units to sell. Let's put it that way. And it's hard to get any pre-sales, and basically the project is not feasible financially.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I think I'll just clarify. I think what Liz was trying to get to is that, a penthouse in that location, of that size, 4 bedrooms, I think it is it 4?
Sure.
That we're talking about several thousand
Is now joining.
dollars a week.
Sure.
Even at 80%, that is not affordable for someone who can only apply for that unit on a certain salary, because the criteria is 80%, but you have to earn, I can't remember exactly what the figure is, but it's not a high salary. So that's a huge amount out of that salary. And in the context of affordable housing provisions, that's not affordable. So that's why that question was being asked, as to had that been considered. And your
Absolutely.
affordable housing partner in this, that's been identified in your SOFAX, are they aware which units they'd be given?
Yes. If you look at the rates for affordable housing, they go up by the number of children that you have. So when you obviously a property that has got 4 bedrooms, you usually get a family with 3 to 4 children using that property. And this is basically designed for those families that, let's say, the wife cannot work, and the amount of salary is much lower because one person cannot work in the family, and one of the partners, obviously they work, and they usually work in the area. They can work in the hospital, or they can work in the fire brigade, or whatever it is. So technically, it doesn't mean that they're in a financial sort of issue. It's just the circumstances of their life is in a position that they have a few kids. One of them they cannot work, and the amount of salary is just basically sufficient for this type of property. So if you have 3-4 kids, technically you cannot get a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom unit. You need a 3 to 4 bedroom unit. So it's a different target market. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Laurie,
you.
did you have any questions?
No, I'm still troubled by the fact that how you had affordable housing to pay $2,000 a week rent. It's just, I just can't get my head around that.
Yeah. I guess it has to be lower. So obviously, the third-party company that manages that, they look at the demand at the time that it goes to the market, and if it's not 2,000, if it's 1,500 or 1,300. So our understanding is it may not be that 80% or 70%. It may be 50% of the rent, but whatever it is, it will be determined at the time of basically rental process.
Okay. Any other questions? Clarifications?
No.
No.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. We're aware of the 34. We would definitely encourage you to keep talking.
Sure.
And I know you've already had your without prejudice, and I know you've already looked at some of the issues, which is fantastic. encourage you to keep looking at that. There may be some matters that you can still deal with and address, and we would encourage you to do so.
Sure.
Thank you very much for that. Now, what I'd like to do, Angela from Council, have we managed to find Mr. Finn?
Yes.
Yes. I think
Oh,
he
fantastic.
he is online now.
Hello.
Mr. Finn, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, I've had some technical trouble with my computer, but I'm using...
Oh, there you are. Fantastic.
I'm still here. I was here, but I just couldn't hear anything.
So we could see you were there, but your camera and your mute wasn't coming up. That's fantastic. We all have problems. Anyway, the floor's yours.
Well, thank you. I'm the architect for this project, making the application on behalf of the applicant, who is a pharmacist. He intends to relocate his existing pharmacy in accordance with the pharmacy location rules, which are presented by the Department of Health and Aged Care. The latest version of that document is January 2024, and it provides that a pharmacy within 1.5 kilometres can relocate to a location within 1.5 kilometres of the existing pharmacy, and he will close one pharmacy and open the other. Now, the work that he's proposing to do in terms of requiring consent is a change of use from the existing use, which I think is
Preston
Is now exiting.
which I think is a veterinary surgery, or was a veterinary surgery. And so it's a change of use from one class to a different class. And as a consequence, he intends to upgrade the disability access and the shop fronts so that people with disabilities can have access to the services.
Is now
within.
exiting.
And that's the crux of what's proposed. So I'm really here just to answer any particular questions if I can.
Yep.
My client is also present because he's more across the pharmacy location rules than I am.
Look, to be perfectly frank, I'll just say that the pharmacy rules are the pharmacy rules. They're not the planning rules. They're not matters that we will take into consideration. If you get a license to operate a pharmacy there, that's fine. We're just looking at the planning criteria. So, panel, any questions you have of Mr. Finn? No, please. Thank you. Fantastic. Thank you very much for hanging around and managed to get it online. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
the best.
So now we'll move to the last item on the public agenda, which is 40 The Avenue, Randwick. And I have two speakers, one being Mr. Tony Moody and one being Mr. Michael Fullylove. Mr. Moody, I saw you there. Ah, there you are. You moved on my screen.
Yes.
There you are. Okay,
Hi.
the floor is yours.
All
What do
right.
you want to tell them?
Panel Chair and panel members, my name is Tony Moody. I'm a consultant planner. I'm supporting the objections raised by the other terraces in the state heritage item, ranging between 30 to 42. On the issue of heritage, I'm not a heritage expert, but I defer to the advice of Council's heritage planner and the Heritage Council. Both parties are obviously very critical of the proposed development. In terms of the proposed liquor licence, council officers have correctly raised a range of adverse potential impacts in the locality. And there's also inconsistencies in the details of the operation. Particularly, there's no proper acoustic report relating to noise-inducing elements of the proposed development. I should stress, whether or not the liquor licence proceeds, the proposed development on a range of other grounds, particularly heritage and the other matters that I'll raise, render this application most unreasonable. The next issue is excavation. I've rarely seen the extent of excavation, volume and inadequate side setbacks as currently proposed under this application. The excavation is extensive and it goes very close to the side boundaries. As a result, there's inadequate deep soil landscaping. And there's also deep concern about the potential geotechnical stability of the adjoining state heritage terraces.
There's no proper geotechnical report. There's no proper subsurface examination of the foundations and footings of these heritage items. And as you're keenly aware, panel members, buildings of this age invariably have foundations and footings which are not, obviously, to the current construction standards. The extent and nature of excavation is totally excessive. There's also drainage concerns. There's also traffic and parking concerns. Local residents who know their area very well raise concerns relating to the adequacy of parking and the inadequacy of street parking in the area. There's been no parking survey. Furthermore, one document in the applicant's documentation claims there's 2 employees. 2 other documents say there are 11 employees. The difference in those 2 numbers results in a significant undersupply of parking on the site. There's no proper acoustic impact. And there's also inadequate information regarding loss of affordable housing. There's also a breach of the floor space ratio. Whether one adopts the applicant's calculation or council's calculations, there is still a breach. And as you're keenly aware, clause 4.6 requests require positive environmental planning grounds lodged by an applicant. In this case, there is clear and unequivocal adverse impacts on a range of matters. Rather than positive environmental planning grounds, there are negative environmental planning grounds. Panel members, I earnestly request that you refuse the application on the basis of the grounds raised in the council officer's report. Many thanks.
Thank you very much. Any questions of Mr. Moody? He is an expert, therefore you're allowed to ask him technical questions.
Nothing.
No questions.
We're right.
No? Oh, you're saved. Okay. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Fullilove.
Thank you, Chair and members of the panel. Michael Fullilove, I'm a co-owner of number 36, The Avenue. Look, The Avenue is one of the most beautiful streets in Sydney, and I'm pleased to hear, Chair, that you visited it or walked along the street. The terrace is unique. It's a state heritage listed item consisting of a complete row of 9 grand terraces built by an Irish builder for all his daughters, opposite a park which was once a cricket pitch, near 2 ancient churches and historic council chambers. Those of us lucky enough to live in these remarkable buildings know it's a privilege, and with privilege comes responsibility. And we do everything we can to preserve and care for these buildings. These terraces attract people who appreciate and love them, people who live here for 20 or 30 or 40 years. My wife and I watched these terraces for years, hoping that one would come up for sale and that we would be able to afford to buy one. And we're so grateful that we're able to live there. And when we renovated it a few years ago, our house, we did so very carefully, investing in beautiful materials and trying to do justice to the building. So you can imagine the horror that this DA has occasioned, not just in us, but in the long list of 28 objectors, which includes every other house on the row, the heads of all the significant institutions in that neighbourhood, the rector of St Jude's Church, the minister of the Randwick Presbyterian Church, the principal of Coogee Prep, heritage architects, and so on. All the residents are very heartened by the assessment of council officers, including council's consultants, which reflect the concerns that we have. The scale of development is contemplated just is completely unsuited to this location. From our point of view, to introduce an intensive commercial operation accommodating close to 30 hotel guests, fed and watered via a liquor licence, plus 11 staff in a single terrace, which in most other cases accommodates a family on a peaceful residential street opposite a park like this, just seems unthinkable. Look, there are many problems, and I know that my time is limited, but I would just say, I'd point just to a couple of them. The idea of excavation of 2 new basement levels deep below ground, despite the fragility of these buildings, a liquor license which would turn this small courtyard essentially into a beer garden for 16 people with access to a self-service bar, and destroy the amenity of the rest of the residents of that area, all of whom have a small courtyard, to have a dozen guests drinking and smoking only a couple of metres away from us in a quiet residential street. The additional congestion in the back lane, which is also already highly congested, the lack of parking to which the previous speaker referred, and the heritage impacts from the construction and the vibration is all really horrendous for all of us to think about. So just to conclude, Chair, I would say that for us, for all of us, for everybody who uses that park, for everybody who knows how special those buildings are in that area this is a grossly excessive development which would do permanent damage to buildings and to a locality which is beautiful and special, but also old and fragile, and which requires love and care, not greed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any queries or clarifications of Mr. Wheeler?
No. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
You being the last speakers on the last items on this public agenda, I will, unless Council has anyone else that I've missed or can tell me, I'll close the meeting at 1:37.
Thank you.
Thank you, panel members.
Thank you very much, and we'll deliberate.